Opo.
Maraming
Councillor Hartley, we're going to go live now. I'll tell you. Right, we're live now, Councillor Hartley.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this extraordinary council meeting, which, as you are aware from the agenda, only has one substantive item on the agenda. This is going to be as strange for me as it is for you, so please bear with us. The one rule that I think that we do need to emphasize is that you should keep your microphone muted at all times during the meeting unless you're invited to speak. I'll take, first of all, a roll call. Jane, would you like to tell us who is present in this meeting?
Thank you. We've got councillors Nadeem Ahmed, Zafar Ali, Mohammed Amr, Eileen Ansar, Mohammed Arshad, Naeem Ashraf, Rosemary Carroll, Colin Carter, David Clegg, Sarah Coburn-Price, Tommy Cooney, Matt Goulthorpe, Tony Greaves, Mohammed Hanif, Ken Hartley, Mohammed Iqbal, Yasser Iqbal, Carlo Leonti, Dorothy Lord, Nathan McCollum, Asjad Mahmood, Alice Mann, Jane Mills, Brian Newman, Ken Turner, Graham Waugh, David Whip, and Tom Whip. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Myself as well, Jane.
Jane, you've missed me out.
You forgot my name, Jane.
Okay, thank you. Also, Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
You've got me as well.
And you've missed me as and all.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Myself.
With me in the Wilson room here. Yeah. Just for completeness, those people who weren't called out by Jane, could you just signal again so that we can straighten the record here in the Wilson room?
Yeah, Councillor Neil McGowan's here.
Well,
Jane,
is Councillor George Adam online?
I can't see him.
Neil Butterworth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Colin Carter? Victoria Fletcher?
No.
Either of the Foxleys?
Here. Colin Carter is here.
Colin Carter is here.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just give you the apologies that I've received.
Fine.
We've got Marjorie Adams, Muzawar Arshad, Victoria Fletcher, Margaret Foxley, Paul Foxley, Julie Henderson, Jonathan Nixon, Steve Petty, and Kathleen Shaw.
Thank you kindly. Are any of the group leaders aware of any further apologies from their group? No. In that case, the second item on the agenda is a declaration of interest.
Sorry, I did have my hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Nadeem?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Purcell.
Thank you. And no, Rosie Carroll's still here. Okay. Reminder then of declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the legal requirement concerning the declaration of interest. A member must declare a disclosable pecuniary interest which he or she has in any item on the agenda. And a member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item may not participate in any discussion of the matter at the meeting and must not participate in any vote taken on the matter at the meeting. In addition, the council's standing orders require a member with a disclosable pecuniary interest to sign off, leave the room, where the meeting is held and any discussion or voting takes place. Any declarations of interest at all from members? None. Thank you very much. Just for completeness, with me in the Wilson room here are the strategic director and the corporate director. And of course, Jane is operating from the committee section office. The meeting itself is a very special one with a very complex topic. And therefore, I'd like to outline to you the way in which we propose to run the meeting here. Following consultation with group leaders, I'd like to run the meeting as follows. We take the complex topic as one single debate. And the way that I would propose to proceed is that I'll ask Councillor Iqbal, as leader of the council, to open the debate and move a motion. And he will also nominate a seconder to speak to that motion. I then propose to call on Councillor Nadeem Ahmed to speak, and if he so wishes to introduce an amendment, and he will also call a seconder to speak against or speak on his amendment. I'll then call on Councillor David Whip, unless there has been a prior agreement. I'm not yet aware that there has been one, so following the group leaders speak, we will then open the debate to members of the floor, and I'll leave it to the group leaders themselves to indicate who they wish to speak and how. We'll then, under normal procedure, vote on the amendments in the sort of reverse order of which they were put on the table. And each vote will be a recorded vote. And following each recorded vote, I will announce the vote and we'll move on backward through to the original amendment proposed by the leader. The 5-minute rule for speaking will apply, and although you can't see the red lights, they are in operation here in the Wilson room. But I will give you a warning 1 minute before your time is up to give you an opportunity to wrap up whatever it is you want to say. I remind members that they can speak once and only once, except for the movers of the motions and the amendments, who will have the right to reply. And hopefully that will see us through to a resolution that we can agree for the end of the meeting. Moving therefore on to the substantive agenda, can I ask Councillor Iqbal to speak on the topic? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon to you and to all the colleagues that are on this virtual meeting. I see that you're not in your usual regalia this afternoon, and maybe that's a sign of things to come. But Mr. Mayor, I've been privileged to be a member of this council for over 22 years and honoured to serve as the leader since 2015. I've attended many meetings with my fellow Lancashire leaders since serving as your leader on the topic of a combined authority and local government reorganisation. And if I'm honest, Mr. Mayor, it's been an extremely slow and tedious process over the last 5 years. I brought a recommendation to Council back in December 2015, and the Governance Working Group met in January 2016, where it was agreed by all parties that we'd proceed with a combined authority without an elected mayor for Lancashire. And to this extent, a submission was made to government in June of 2016. But as the report states at paragraph 14, the government did not act upon it. What we've had for the last 4 years, Mr. Mayor, is a lack of any decision making at the heart of government. And meanwhile, we as a council have continued to suffer from savage funding cuts since 2010, running into millions of pounds, and that's directly affected the services that this council can provide. If I was to be blunt, Mr. Mayor, I would say that the people of Pendle have been done over by the government, and unless something drastic changes very soon, we're going to be bankrupt. Pendle will cease to exist. It's as blunt as that. And this isn't a unique picture to us, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. Let me give you an example of what's happening across Lancashire. It's estimated that Lancashire councils, as a result of this COVID-19 crisis, based on estimates that we've had from our finance officers, we will have lost over £250 million this year. And has the government recompenses for any of this £250 million? Have they heck, Mr. Mayor? The answer is a big fat no at the moment. Mr. Mayor, I'm an optimistic type of individual, and ultimately I'll continue to fight for the best deal for my district and my borough, and whilst I'm leading this council. I know that as a council, with the support of our dedicated officers, we're punching well above our weight. But we've been forced to fight, Mr. Mayor, in the heavyweight division with only lightweight funding. Something has got to change, and the sooner that the government realise the consequences of their ideological-driven decisions affecting decision-making in this borough and the services that this borough provides, things have got to change. Mr. Mayor, the thought of combined authority with an elected mayor from Pendle indeed seems very appealing to me and no doubt to everybody else. However, as I said, I'm a realist and optimistic. It's highly unlikely that the elected mayor would ever be from Pendle because there are bigger fish in this pond than Pendle. But as the report says, Mr. Mayor, in paragraph 10, there's a real risk here that this council is being asked to walk into something completely blind. And, if there was a deal on the table from government that said, OK, Pendle, we'd like you to get involved in a combined authority with an elected mayor. And by the way, this is the carrot, and it's a huge carrot that provides services to the people of Pendle. That's maybe something that I would consider. And if they were upfront and honest, Mr. Mayor, I believe that what they should do is ask us as a district council, and we're an equal part of Lancashire councils, along with the other 14 councils that sit around Lancashire leaders. If the government were really, truly honest about democratic decision making, this was an opportunity for them to say to councils across Lancashire, you know what, you give us a tailor-made package that suits your residents. And Mr. Mayor, you, I, and the other 47 councillors on this borough, along with the officers, we will be able to demonstrate what's the best for Pendle by speaking to our residents and representing those residents that have put us in this place to speak today. I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with government, but the sad thing is that that's not what the game is on town. My group's view is, Mr. Mayor, that this is, and I'm not being political, I'm being factual here, that this is a cynical trick by government and civil servants to lure us into, as a district council, to sign up to a combined authority with an elected mayor, so government can deal with one person across Lancashire. And, constantly in the council chamber, we're always saying that Preston's a long way away, Blackburn's a long way away. Well, whoever the elected mayor would be, if indeed that happened, they could be as far away as Lancaster, or they could be as far away as West Lancashire, 1 million miles away from Pendle, Mr. Mayor. my view is, and I'm going to move a motion shortly, that at this stage, Mr. Mayor, this council doesn't commit to be involved in a combined authority with an elected mayor, because there's simply no details on the table. I can't recommend to colleagues across the chamber that, as your leader, that I would ask you to sign up to something when I myself do not know what the facts are, and I don't know what the future holds in terms of the future of our borough. So, Mr. Mayor, my motion, which is set out, and I understand Jane kindly shared it with all councillors about an hour ago, is quite plain and simple to the government. It's simply saying that we previously signed up to a combined authority without an elected mayor because we still kept power and decision making within our borough. We were an equal vote as part of the process, whether that be with Lancashire County Council, Blackburn, Blackpool, Burnley, or whichever other council we've got across Lancashire. I am saying that the fundamental point here, Mr. Mayor, is that we need to protect the local democratic accountability for the people of Pendle. So therefore, what I'm moving, Mr. Mayor, is that we write to the government once the anticipated government white paper is published, and we're led to believe that it's going to be in autumn, which I assume is around September, subject to other things obviously not exceeding. We then have a formal discussion. We ask our officers to do some of the legwork before then, anticipating what's coming, along with other councils across Lancashire. And when the government introduce that white paper, certainly I will be more well informed as to what government's thinking is. But Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to say, and this may disappoint some colleagues across Lancashire, but my loyalties lie with Pendle and Pendle first, and then Lancashire. My loyalties to this borough at this stage, Mr. Mayor, is that because of the lack of clarity from government, that we do not proceed with a combined authority with an elected mayor. And I would urge all colleagues to support that. I'm grateful to Councillor David Whip and Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, who I've tried to involve in my discussions, and Councillor Whip, I understand, will be seconding the motion, Mr. Mayor. And I look forward to cross-party support so we can move forward as a council. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iqbal. Do you have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Whip, I understand that you're going to second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's nothing like shuffling the deck chairs in the middle of the crisis. I think, regrettably, a lot of the passengers on the Titanic found that to their cost. And it's quite extraordinary that in the midst of the crisis that we currently have, we have an extraordinary council meeting with this single item on the agenda. In all the other things that have been happening here in Pendle and across the country and across the world indeed, this is the first full meeting that we have had, and that just gives an indication of a distortion of priorities which this discussion is bringing about. And the discussion is about local people losing local control. It's about a power grab by party bosses in Preston and Blackburn, and it's about people being dictated to of the local issues that affect them in their streets, in their neighbourhoods and in their townships. And what the proposal on the table, I don't mean Councillor Iqbal's proposal, but what the proposal from the great and the good across Lancashire is a power grab. It would see those local decisions currently taken by our area committees on planning issues in each of our districts lost to some unimaginably distant body with who knows what structures. There would definitely be unaccountable structures. The concept of an elected mayor, a person holding a lot of power for 1.5 million people, is one that sits ill with me and certainly with my colleagues. It's not a sort of structure which lends itself to democratic control. It doesn't lend itself to the involvement of local people, and it certainly wouldn't be accountable. As Councillor Iqbal said, local government is bankrupt, and putting COVID-19 to one side, we have the conundrum of social care. And until the costs of social care are sorted out, and I would argue that they need to be placed with the health service and have a comprehensive end-to-end approach to those services, then I don't think local government has any hope of getting into the black in terms of its finances. So the social care conundrum needs cracking. And given that we are in the midst of a COVID-19 crisis, it's undemocratic and unaccountable for this government to be pushing through these proposals under the cover of COVID. These are things that should be discussed in the light of day. They ought to be discussed thoroughly and not under pressure, under duress, as we are. Now, there's reference been made to the white paper. It's quite clear that the government are intent on pushing these proposals through. They are deeply unpopular with people in Pendle. They are deeply unpopular with people across the county council. And I think we will see an uprising, and there's first signs of that are in Ribble Valley, where an enormous number of people have signed an online petition opposing this. If this is to be thrust down our throats, then it will be against the wishes of myself, of my group, and I hope a majority of Pendle councillors would support resisting this. Clearly,
1 minute, Councillor Witt.
Thank you. Clearly, we do desperately need funding. We have seen hundreds and hundreds of jobs lost here in Pendle, and we have a threat of many, many more to come. But is it right? Government should hold this over our heads and say, well, you can't have any funding unless you join in this undemocratic structure. Do away with the local accountability. Surely the government should be providing resources in a fair way and providing resources to the areas that need it, those of greatest disadvantage and those at greatest of risk. I second this proposal, Mr. Mayor. I do hope there's unanimity across the council. It has been hammered out between groups in the last few days, and I think if there isn't a majority for it, then we are on a slippery slope and the rocky road to ruin. I second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Witt. For the information of everyone, I understand now that Councillor George Adams and Councillor Sahib have joined the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, could I just say Councillor Crossley has also joined?
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Arguably, this is one of the most important decisions we as elected members will make. The decision we make will have a long-lasting impact on the future of Pendle Council itself and our residents. In terms of the motion that's been put forward, we have been working with Councillor Iqbal and other group leaders to try and come to a unanimous decision and all agree on something. Unfortunately, whilst the end point is what we all want to see, and I agree with the conclusion that we shouldn't proceed with the combined authority with an elected mayor. Some of the wording in the motion is unacceptable and inaccurate. The reason why our group won't be supporting the motion as set out is because at number 1 it mentions the abolition of Pendle Borough Council. That is just an assumption at this stage. We are assuming that that's what will happen. And secondly, it mentions Member of Parliament for Pendle supporting combined authorities with mayor. Yes, my understanding is the MP does support devolution, but that doesn't necessarily mean a combined authority with an elected mayor. And it's also assuming that when the government white paper comes out, that's the road we will set upon, that we will have a combined authority with an elected mayor. And our argument is that we should wait until we have more information before we are able to make an informed decision. Of course, there's reasons why combined authorities could potentially benefit our residents. Those who advocate combined authorities argue that decisions are perhaps, it could be argued, are made closer to people, communities and businesses, and that they would involve the transfer of power and funding from national to local level. People also argue that combined authorities could lead to more efficiency and the needs of local people are better understood. But will that really happen? In terms of investment, of course, I agree, we'd all like to see more funding and extra investment in Pendle, but will that really come in a combined authority when there's different areas competing against each other? And as has already been mentioned, there are far larger areas and more powerful and influential areas than ourselves. And in terms of influence we would have as Pendle, what influence would we really have in a combined authority when we're competing against, like I said, other authorities? Yes, it is an opportunity, if it's done correctly, to get rid of some of the problems which we face in local government. There is an opportunity, but again, will that be delivered? Like most things, obviously, there's arguments why combined authorities won't be a good idea, and I tend to agree with the information we have so far. I accept them arguments. Will a combined authority, in terms of Pendle, it's going to be in addition to, not in place of, local authorities, and that, I believe, will lead to extra cost and extra money which we will be asking our residents ultimately to pay for. We mustn't jeopardise the future of Pendle Borough Council, as we all want the decisions to remain local. In a combined authority, will we really have influence over the decisions that will be made that may or not be for the interests of Pendle? Arguably, the decision-making powers will be reduced in a combined authority. In terms of the position of an elected mayor, I believe they will have significant and huge influence over the direction and strategies of a combined authority. Yet the argument put forward for elected mayors is that they will work with all the areas and try and come to unanimous decisions. I remain to be convinced on this.
1 minute, Councillor.
And the decision in terms of the significant decisions that will be made by a small number of people, it will add to the extra cost. And I do believe that we all have, we need more time and we need more information before we can make a decision. We need more information in terms of funding that we will have. We cannot lose control of local decision-making process. We need value for money. And these are all the reasons why we should not support a combined authority with an elected mayor at this moment in time. There is an amendment which I've sent to the officers, and I hope they will now share that with the other groups, and I move.
Thank you kindly, Councillor Ahmed. Jane, do we have an amendment on this? I don't have one in front of me.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. Amendment that I've now just been passed is this council welcomes the potential extra investment and integrated strategy for our region that is likely to follow from the creation of a combined authority, with or without a directly elected mayor. However, as councillors, we know how costly and confusing it is for residents to be part of 3 layers of local government. So we believe the addition of a 4th layer without significant scrutiny prior to any streamlining, reorganisation and optimisation would be wasteful folly. We therefore support waiting until we have more information on which to base our decision, especially the anticipated government white paper on English devolution and the potential improved governance arrangements to be put forward by the local government association. After the uncertainty caused by the global pandemic, it is more important than ever to be in possession of the pertinent facts before coming to a decision that will have long-lasting consequences for all residents of Pendle. Councillor Ahmed, do you have a seconder for that motion?
Yes, Councillor Goldthorpe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goldthorpe, would you like to speak on the motion then, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On the amendment to the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is very clear to me that any decision by this council to support the creation of a combined authority and an elected mayor at this time would be highly premature, if not reckless. I'm also aware, Mr. Mayor, Stevenson does in fact not support a combined authority and elected mayor for Pendle. We're in the midst of a national crisis, the like of which we have not seen in our lifetime, in itself a dramatic catalyst for change, the cause and effect of which we have yet to see and fully understand. Also, we would be making a decision, Mr. Mayor, prior to the publication of the government white paper on local devolution and reorganisation, which prompts the question, why the rush? I, for one, have yet to be convinced that a 4th layer will give value for money to the residents and ratepayers of Pendle, certainly without major reorganisation. So, Mr. Mayor, the time is not right, and I fully support and second the amendment as tabled by Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Goldthorpe. I'm going to ask councillors in general, therefore, if you wish to speak on the amendment itself, can you signify by raising your hand so that we can determine a list of who wishes to speak? Can you click your hand up, raise your hand? Lord Greaves. Councillor Greaves? Councillor Whip? No. Councillor Greaves, would you wish to speak, please?
Councillor
Can you
Greaves is
unmute your
muted.
microphone? Can you unmute your microphone, Tony?
Right, I've done that. I found the hand, I hadn't found the microphone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Good.
Yeah.
Well, greetings from fairly sunny London. I don't know what it's like in Pendle. Am I speaking about the amendment now?
Yes, you are.
Just the amendment, right. Yes. Well, other members may have more direct information than me about what Mr. Stevenson, the MP, has said about unitary authorities. My understanding, he doesn't talk to me, so I don't know. But my understanding is that he has said to people that he was in favour of an East Lancashire unitary authority based clearly on Blackburn, and that this was something which was going to be put forward, and he would be supporting that. If the Conservatives here can deny that categorically, that would, in my view, be a good thing. The basic question on the Conservative amendment is the one which Councillor Ahmed said in a different context. He said, do we have to do it now? Well, we don't have to reorganise local government now. We certainly don't, and therefore I agree with that. But we don't have the time to just hang back and see what the government is doing. If we, as Pendle Council, as Pendle councillors together, have a view of the future, if we have ideas on how the combined authority might work, if we believe that a mayor for the whole of Lancashire, from Heysham to Ramsbottom, from Skelmersdale to Barnoldswick and all the rest, including the existing unitaries of Blackpool and Blackburn, if we think that is a good idea, let's say so. I think it's a completely ridiculous idea on every count. If we think that, the time to say it is now. And finally, it's been suggested, I don't know what's happened to my picture. Finally, if it's suggested that the idea of unitary reorganisation is not something that we should even discuss now, well, we all know that's what the government wants to see throughout the country, if they can get it. We all know that that is behind the mayoral proposal. We all know the government have said that if you want an elected mayor for the whole of Lancashire, you will also have to have unitary authorities. So it is on the table now. We're not putting it on the table, but clearly it would be silly for us just to sit back and say, well, let's see what they're proposing. We need to take the initiative and tell them what we think should be happening.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Whip, I understand you wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking on the amendment begins by a trumpet call about the potential extra investment that follows from having a combined authority. Well, I'm sorry, but putting it another way to what I said earlier, Pendle's needs are paramount as far as this council is concerned. The people who live in Pendle deserve better than being bribed with a promise of perhaps nothing in 10 or 20 years' time. The needs of people in Pendle, the people who are losing their jobs now, the people who are on their uppers and unable to know when where the next meal is coming from, deserve to have an action plan and answers at this point in time. We cannot spend umpteen, I was going to say hours, but probably months, if not years, wrangling about structures, when what we need to be talking about is the needs of the people who live in our area, those people who we represent, and who deserve and demand that we pay attention to their problems here and now. And if the government turn around and say, oh, well, sorry, you don't have an elected mayor or you don't have a combined authority, so those people have to starve, or those people have to remain destitute, or those people have to remain unemployed for years and years and years, that clearly is a damning indictment of what this government is about. So, Mr. Mayor, I do not accept the proposal put forward by the Conservatives. I think that we need to be honest with our people, we need to be honest with the government, and we need to demand a fair deal for people in Pendle with the structures that we've got, and we should be arguing that case long and loud and making sure that the message gets through. And I'm afraid with the Conservative proposal this afternoon, it's quite clear that we haven't even convinced our Conservative colleagues of that need, and that is a crying shame. Mr. Mayor, I begin to despair sometimes, and this is one of them. I'll say no more.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? No. Back to Councillor Nadeem Ahmed then, please.
Mr. Mayor, do I have the right to wrap up on the amendment, or?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, are you going to wrap up on your amendment? Do you wish to respond?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak, please. So am I the last speaker on the amendment? Can I just seek that clarification? Because I've moved the amendment.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, if that's the case, it's Councillor Iqbal here. I'd like to speak against the amendment.
In that case, Councillor Iqbal, I'll take you first.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm disappointed with Councillor Ahmed. I mean, I, in good faith, contacted him and Councillor Whip at least a couple of days ago with the first draft of my motion, and we had a discussion, and ultimately earlier this morning we agreed on it. Well, what I thought we'd agreed on a motion, but clearly, you know, Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price last night, burning the midnight oil, drafted this motion that she sent to both Councillor Ahmed and Councillor Goldthorpe for them to play about with. But instead of, you know, talking to myself and Councillor Whip, it appears as though at the lastminute.com the amendment's been put in. And the amendment is quite confusing, Mr. Mayor. It starts off by saying the council welcomes the potential extra investment in integrated strategy for our region that's likely to follow from the creation of Combined with or without a directly elected mayor. Well, I don't know where they're getting this from, Mr. Mayor, because I've sat in meetings when the top civil servant has been dispatched by the government to Lancashire to tell us in no uncertain terms that a combined authority without an elected mayor is cloud cuckoo land. And those are my words, cloud cuckoo land, not the civil servants. So for Councillors Ahmed and Goldthorpe, via Councillor Coburn-Price, and God knows who else, to put this amendment, Mr. Mayor, I'd have wished there'd have been some consultation between the group leaders, if nobody else. But Councillor Ahmed started off his amendment by saying, and Councillor Goldthorpe also spoke to say that the Member of Parliament wasn't in favour of this. Let me just refer the two of them, if nobody else, to paragraphs 9 and 10 of the report, where they campaigned back in December, Mr. Mayor, with Boris Johnson for devolution in England. Now, devolution in England, Mr. Mayor, is not the status quo as far as the Conservative Party are concerned, and nor is it stated in their manifesto. And for the Conservative colleagues on this council this afternoon to spring this amendment at the last minute, I don't believe Councillor Ahmed's written it, and obviously the email that I've got proves that he's not written it as the leader of their group, demonstrates to me that there are other people who seem to be pulling the strings of the Conservative group on this council. And I didn't want to be, as I said at the offset, Mr. Mayor, my first draft of the motion that I sent out to colleagues, I could have made it as political as I wanted, but I chose not to because I thought we could get some agreement. I'd urge the Conservative colleagues on the council to really reconsider what they're saying. And Councillor Ahmed took exception to my motion, and I'll talk about that when I wrap up, but I'm sorry to say he's wrong. He's factually wrong, Mr. Mayor. And I would urge him and Councillor Goldthorpe to withdraw Councillor Coburn-Price's amendment that she's cobbled together from 32 minutes past midnight today. And let's have unanimity on this council. Let's fight for Pendle together.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Iqbal. I did notice, in fact, that Councillor Turner put his hand up, but unfortunately he was too late to enter into the debate on this amendment at that stage. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, would you like to wrap up on the amendment, please, before I put this amendment to a vote?
Yes, I would. Just in response, we all agree that Pendle comes first. I don't think just to suggest otherwise is totally incorrect. To suggest that we as Conservative councillors don't have the interests of our residents or Pendle at heart is totally misleading. It's totally misleading. In terms of our motion, it does say the potential investment. That's exactly what it is, potential investment. We don't know if we'll get it. That's the whole point. We don't know if we're going to have this funding. We don't know what a combined authority is going to look like. In effect, we are both saying the same thing. And to suggest that we're not saying the same thing is, again, just misleading the public. The needs of our residents will always come first for us. We want a fair deal, as Councillor Whip is saying. Of course we want a fair deal. Which councillor is going to sit there and say, oh, we don't want a fair deal for Pendle? Come on, let's grow up. We want a fair deal for Pendle. And in terms of Councillor Iqbal's comments, yes, I've tried in good faith to work with Councillor Iqbal on this amendment. And we did. We sent amendments back to Councillor Iqbal. But the changes that came back, there was hardly any change with the amendments.
Is now joining.
And that's the reason we are unable to support it. In terms of comments regarding Andrew Stevenson, yes, my understanding is Andrew Stevenson is in favour of devolution of power, but that doesn't necessarily mean a combined authority with an elected mayor. And so some of the things that are coming out and just portraying and giving this image that we don't want what's good for Pendle and we are against and we want this, or even to suggest that we want in favour of this combined authority at this moment in time. So let's look at, in terms of the motion put forward by Councillor Iqbal, he's saying the same thing. All it's really saying is, let's wait, the council resolves to wait for the government white paper on English devolution in the autumn, to seek clear information on the devolution deal for Lancashire and any proposals for local government reorganisation arising from a proposal to establish a combined authority with an elected mayor, to consider all options at a future meeting once all the facts are established. Of course, that's what we're saying. What else are we saying? Am I missing something? No, I'm not. So to suggest otherwise is just totally incorrect. And it's saying at this stage, number 4, due to the lack of clarity, does not proceed with a combined authority with an elected mayor. That's what we're saying. That's exactly what we're saying. And to suggest otherwise is just baffling. And in terms of to suggest that the amendment we have put forward was drafted at 8:30, it wasn't. So again, just full of assumptions as usual is Councillor Iqbal. I'm sorry, I'm a bit annoyed, but needs to be said. It wasn't drafted today.
Can I raise a point of order on that, Mr. Mayor? I've got an email from Sarah Coburn-Price sent to Councillor Ahmed at 32 minutes past midnight this morning saying, "Dear Nadeem and Mike, here's the draft motion."
That wasn't this morning. It was I've sent it to Philip. It wasn't this morning. It was yesterday, or whatever it was. It wasn't today. So I don't know which email you refer to. That's all I'll say at this moment. So let me make it absolutely clear. We are not in support of a combined authority with an elected mayor at this moment in time. We don't have the information. Simple as that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
Hello?
Sorry. Yes. I apologise. That I am with this. At this point in time, I'm going to put the amendment to the vote. Straightforward. Dean will, in fact, ask each of the present members to signify in the usual recorded vote fashion whether they wish to vote for the amendment or against the amendment. And again, for clarity, I will once more finally read out the amendment that you are being asked to vote on. So this is the amendment supplied to me through Councillor Nadeem Ahmed and Mike Goulthorpe that we've just debated. This council welcomes the potential extra investment and integrated strategy for our region that is likely to follow from the creation of a combined authority with or without a directly elected mayor. However, as councillors, we know how costly and confusing it is for residents to be part of 3 layers of local government. So we believe the addition of a 4th layer without significant scrutiny prior to any streamlining, reorganisation and optimisation would be wasteful folly. Stop. We therefore support waiting until we have more information on which to base our decision, especially the anticipated government white paper on English devolution and the potential improved governance arrangements to be put forward by the local government association. After the uncertainty caused by the global pandemic, it is more important than ever to be in possession of the pertinent facts before coming to a decision that will have long-lasting consequences for all residents of Pendle. That is the motion. So we'll move to a named vote. Can I hand over to Dean, please?
So, members, if you can hear me, just to say that if you are currently unmuted, then could you mute? But just to remember to unmute yourself when I call out your name and then mute yourself, please. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order. And if you are for the motion, for the amendment, say for. If you're against, say against. Councillor George Adam.
Against.
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
For.
Councillor Zafar Ali. Councillor Zafar Ali. Councillor Zafar Ali. Councillor Mohammed Amar.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad. Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Just a moment, Dean, just let me unmute.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Councillor Arshad's muted. You'll need to unmute on your phone.
Councillor Eileen Ansar. Councillor Eileen Ansar.
Councillor Ansar will need to unmute on her phone again.
Councillor Eileen Ansar. Councillor Naheem Ashraf.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
For.
Councillor Neil Butterworth.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Carroll.
For.
Councillor Colin Carter.
For.
Councillor David Clegg.
Against.
Councillor Sarah Coburn Price.
For.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
For.
Councillor Linda Crossley.
For.
Councillor Mike Gothorpe.
For.
Councillor Tony Greaves.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Anif.
Against.
Councillor Ken Hartley.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Carlo Leonti. Councillor Dorothy Lord,
Against.
Councillor Nathan McCullum,
For.
Councillor Neil McGowan,
For.
Councillor Ashjad Mahmood,
Against.
Councillor Alice Mann,
Against.
Councillor Jane Mills,
Against.
Councillor Brian Newman,
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Saqib, Councillor Saqib,
Against.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant,
Against.
Councillor Ken Turner,
Abstain.
Councillor Graham Wall,
For.
Councillor David Whip,
Against.
Councillor Tom Whip, Councillor Tom Whip,
Against.
so I'm just going to back to those councillors who weren't able to connect. Councillor Zafar Ali,
Dean, can I just say I've got a message from Councillor Ali that he's against the motion. Councillor Sheila Wicks is also on the call.
so Councillor Ali's vote is not valid. He needs to be on the call to make the vote. Councillor
Okay.
Wicks, Sheila Wicks,
Against.
Councillor Eileen Ansar, and Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Could I just say that Councillor Ali is on the call, but he's in the chat and he can't be heard.
No, still can't accept that. We need to,
Okay,
you need
fine.
to indicate. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the end of the voting.
Point of order.
Councillor Whip, point of order.
Point of order. Councillor Zafar Ali clearly is in the meeting. He has indicated his voting intention in the documented meeting chat. The fact that he has been unable to articulate his wish verbally ought not
Is now
to rule him
exiting.
out of being included in the voting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to raise one of the
Councillor Ahmed.
Yes, in the notes that were sent to group leaders in terms of the procedure that would be followed, it clearly states in E that the name of each person would be called out 3 times, and if there is no response, we assume they're not voting. Mr. Chair, the name has been called out 3 times. There's no
Councillor Ahmed.
Cannot be.
I accept what you're saying. I also confirm that in the numbers I am going to give you, the vote has not been counted. However, the results of the vote are for the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure there was another one where the name was called out 3 times and there was no response. And then Dean Langton
I assure you, Councillor Ahmed, they have not been counted. Do I need to say that 3 times?
Mr. Mayor, if you set the rules, you've got to stick to them.
We have stuck to the rules, and those 2 votes have not been counted. The result of the vote is as follows. For the motion, 13, 13. So that's for the amendment submitted by Councillor Ahmed. 41313. Against 1919 with 1 abstention. So the amendment is lost, and we throw back therefore to the original motion, where we are going to take a vote on the original motion submitted by Councillor Iqbal. Everyone happy with that? So once again, a recorded vote.
So members, again, if you are for the motion, say for. If you're against, say against.
Sorry.
Councillor Adam.
For.
Councillor Ahmed.
Against.
Councillor Zafar Ali.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Amma.
For.
Councillor Eileen Ansar. Councillor Eileen Ansar. Councillor Ansar. Councillor Mohammed Arshad. Councillor Mohammed Arshad. Councillor Arshad. Councillor Naeem Ashraf.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
Against.
Councillor Neil Butterworth.
Against.
Councillor Rosemary Carroll.
Against.
Councillor Colin Carter. Councillor Colin Carter. Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Coburn Price. Councillor Sarah Coburn Price.
Against?
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Against.
Councillor Linda Crossley. Councillor Linda Crossley. Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Mike Goulthorpe.
Against?
Councillor Tony Greaves.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Hanif.
For.
Councillor Ken Hartley.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Carlo Leonti.
Against.
Councillor Dorothy Lord.
For.
Councillor Nathan McCullough.
Against.
Councillor Neil McGavin.
Against.
Councillor Asjad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Alice Mack.
For.
Councillor Jane Mills.
For.
Councillor Brian. Councillor Brian Newman. Councillor Newman. Councillor Mohammed Saki.
4.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
4.
Councillor Ken Turner.
4.
Councillor Graham Wall.
Against.
Councillor David Wynn.
For.
Councillor Tom Wood.
4.
And Councillor Charlotte Wicks.
Councillor Wicks has left the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, councillors. Just hold on 1 minute, please.
Mr. Mayor, can I just check if my vote was registered on this occasion? It's Councillor Zafar Ali.
Yes, it was Councillor Zafar Ali.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. I apologise about the technical issue. Unfortunately, it was outside of my reach for some difficulty.
The result of the poll that we've just taken is that in terms of voting for the motion, it is 21. Against the motion, 12. So the motion as submitted by Councillor Iqbal is carried and will be acted on accordingly by the officers of the council. I would like to thank each and every one of you for participating in this meeting this afternoon. And before we close the meeting and break up, I would also like to express the thanks to the officers of this council for the work that they have done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I think they've done an absolutely magnificent job. Not only the officers, but all the staff of Pendle Council who have knuckled down and done an amazing job in very difficult circumstances. Thank you to everyone. I can't wish you a safe journey home since most of you are there, but thank you for coming along, and we will see each other again, I hope, on the next full council, which is scheduled for the 30th of July. End of September. My calendar is wrong. End of September. In the meantime, I hope you all stay safe and well, and thank you once again for participating. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.